Hey, folks. Hi, Valerie.
Hi. How are you?
I'm pretty good, but your audio is terrible.
Terrible. Oh,
Yes, it's like very rough, quote unquote rough. You may want to check your microphone.
okay. I'll try to change headset. Just a
Yeah,
moment.
try that. It's kind of distorted. It got a little better now, but it was really distorted.
Okay. Wait a moment.
All right, we're still a few minutes away.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Please?
Hi, this is Hannes.
Hi, Hannes.
Good to hear you.
So far, I can see it's like mostly presenters in the group. So it's going to be like us talking to each other if nobody else turns up. I sure hope somebody else turns up.
Well, there's still a little bit of time, and it's fairly late in the day.
I know.
Yeah.
So
Tired already now before it even has started.
How's everybody doing?
Very busy. How about you?
Yeah, good so far. Yeah.
Well, you have, I think, fairly relaxed rules in your country here.
Yeah, but you know, people behave the same way more or less anyway.
And I wouldn't say that.
No,
In Austria, like the part of Austria where I live, we had for some period of time we had very strict rules.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying this is cultural, right? So like the way you express how to behave varies, but like, with some exceptions. So, well, I think it evens itself out, or at least in people in places where they're not behaving like complete idiots. But
Hello, and please don't forget to sign with the blue sheet.
right.
It's on the as a part. Is a part.
It's about the same amount of distortions actually.
Oh. But I cannot change it. Sorry.
It is what it is. We'll leave it.
Okay.
You might just want to move the microphone a little bit away from your mouth. It might help.
Okay. Okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, actually a little bit.
Right. Alexei, we now have 2 blue sheets in Etherpad.
It's not a good idea.
No.
Yeah, Alexei, if you use the part of the blue sheet where it actually says blue sheet. Anyway. Sorry, whoever was typing there. All right. All right. So, we are getting a smattering of attendees. For those of you who are just joining, we are about to start. It's a good idea to take the time when we're playing around with audio to go ahead and sign the virtual blue sheet at the end of the bottom of the Etherpad. And if you are curious about where the Etherpad is, it's actually in the meeting announcement and also on the Jabber channel, which is uta@jabber.ietf.org. We'll be starting in a minute or two.
I'm Valery, and I will act as a virtual manager. So if you want to speak, please type +Q in WebEx, and then I will let you to speak. And I think we need a note taker and a Jabber scribe. Any volunteers?
Right. So volunteers, or we'll start dragooning people into service.
In OWASP, ITEC actually helps to take meeting minutes.
Oh, excellent! A volunteer.
No, I meant, what about you guys? You know.
Yeah. It actually helps if you, even if there are 2 of us, it actually helps if we have somebody to do some minute taking and help us keep watch on Jabber. On other meetings that I've been to in this virtualized IETF meeting, I've seen that there are situations where people need to be channeled to WebEx mic, even though you know we're supposed to, we have sort of working queue management, but some people have audio issues. And in that case, you sort of speak up on Jabber and we'll figure it out. Um, 2 minutes past the hour, and if we can get somebody to volunteer to take notes, that would help. Anyone?
I will, but I'll do it in 5 minutes.
That's excellent. That's Alexei, right? Was that Alexei or was it somebody else?
Yes, that was me. Yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, as usual, Alexei, it's just sort of discussion notes and decisions. That's important. It's sort of, we're not, we don't have to record the presentations. So,
sorry, Leif. When you want to go to the next slide, and please tell me, I will.
I was just about to, actually.
Okay.
Yes. So welcome to the virtual interim of the UTA working group. And we're still gathering people. People are still entering the room, so I will speak very slowly for a little bit before we get into our presentations. Your chairs today, me, Leif Johansson, and Valerie Smyslov. And our AD switched over from Alexei to Barry, who's sort of been at least my AD for other working groups. So glad to have you back. Now, I assume since you're all here, that you actually found the WebEx link and meeting slides. But I will repeat here that if you're here and intend to be here, please add your name to the virtual blue sheet at the end of the Etherpad. And do consider joining the Jabber session. So let's avoid using video. Let's mute when we're not speaking and use the by now standard IETF mechanism for queue management, plus Q and minus Q if you want to get removed. Valerie will keep track of people in and out of the queue. Right? Can we just switch back to the note well for 1 second? If this is your first IETF, virtual or otherwise, note the requirements of the note well, especially when it comes to with respect to IPR. It does happen that we get IPR issues in the IETF. It is really important that we keep on top of this. So with that, next slide. And I haven't heard a beep in a while, so I'm sort of hoping that it's safe to kick this ball into play now. So we have a couple of presentations today. We have like 15 minutes each on 3 presentations. And the first is Draft Sheffer UTA BCP 195 BIS. So somebody's taken it upon themselves to go and do a BIS revision of our one of our core specifications, which is very, very good work. And I'm assuming Jaron, and I think is it Peter or Jaron is going to present this? Peter. All right. So I'm assuming you're presenting this here with the hope of getting it adopted as a working group document. But let's get to that after your presentation. So I think Valerie, with that, if Peter is ready to rock and roll, and Valerie, if you can switch over to his slides.
Will you quickly go through the document status before we start presentations, or we will skip it?
Did the question get through to the chairs about going through the document status?
This is me not being attending my mute setting. All right, so yes, we did actually have a RFC published since our last physical meeting. So the required field aspect is now RFC 8689. With that, right. So the TLS for email is in the ISG queue. And remind me, Valerie, I think the misref, is that, can you remind me how is that?
It's a moment of reference to old version duplicate from TLS working group that isn't ready yet. So we are waiting probably for a long time.
To clear, yeah.
Yes, but it's in RFC editor queue, so it's ready to publish. Just waiting for another document for old version duplicate.
Right. And then we have a few proposed. Two of them are being presented today. I don't think I haven't seen anything from the DTLS security module in a while, but I guess it has been revised a few times. So review on the list is, as always, appreciated. And I won't speak to the other drafts because they're well, being presented today. And what's next after that?
So we can go to presentations.
All right, let's switch over to Peter's presentation and hear about the status of 195 bis.
Okay. So as you might recall, Yaron, Ralph Holtz, and I worked on RFC 7525 quite a while ago, 5 years ago, I guess it was. And you can, we would like to have the working group consider whether we should do a BIS version of this. And we will, it's rather late for Yaron and Ralph, which is why I'm presenting, because they might be half asleep. But here we are, and perhaps you could go to the next slide. So
the next slide.
I think it's in process.
It's network lag. It's already switched. Just wait a moment.
Yeah. So this has, I've got the slides on my computer here, so I can start talking, and then we'll keep making progress. So this document is, like I say, 5 years old. We have, this was before TLS 1.3, obviously. So at the time we were actively working to get folks moving to 1.2 and talking about what some of the issues are that folks need to be aware of with regard to 1.2. We had a companion RFC 7457, which you might recall, which talked about the TLS attacks at that time. And obviously a lot has changed in the last 5 years. TLS 1.3 is out. We have quite a bit of adoption of TLS 1.2, TLS 1.3 even has pretty good adoption, and those numbers continue to improve. This RFC or BCP has also been highly cited both inside and outside the IETF, and so I think it's helped to move the needle on people's understanding, especially because Yaron and Ralph and I tried to focus it on folks who are actually using TLS and not for TLS experts. So we're trying to provide guidance that, and I think it has proved useful to people. Let's see, next slide, please. So our thought is we would keep it targeted at that same audience. Obviously, TLS 1.3 was came out in 2018, 3 years after this RFC. So we definitely want to mention TLS. I don't really want to get into too much, we don't really want to present details about all these topics because we'd rat hole on the first one and never get through the planning idea. We just wanted to lay out what the thoughts are and then take some questions. So definitely have to mention TLS 1.3, whether as a should or a must. There's active work among lots of folks who try to deprecate the older versions, and there's the old versions deprecate document in the TLS working group that we would like to reference. And I know I pinged Benjamin the other day, and he said it's just waiting on his action on the AD side. So we should be able to reference that. There was the SCSV stuff in RFC 7507, which came out right about the same time as this. So we might want to update how we describe the fallback processes. There are, of course, TLS 1.3 cleaned up a lot and removed some of the complexity and options that were there. But since not everyone's going to be on TLS 1.3 anytime soon, we should update some of the guidance with regard to TLS 1.2. Just as a side note, I think when Yaron and Ralph and I worked on this and the working group discussed this, we kind of thought we would update this every number of years, and I think that's where we are. Eventually, we'll probably have a TUR-doc that will say don't use TLS 1.2 anymore, but that's going to be some years down the line. So there's some TLS 1.3 challenges that people have in the field, certainly with regard to the zero round trip stuff, and we might want to say some things about that. And there's work going on. Obviously, the certificate transparency work has proceeded quite well. There's also the encrypted SNI, which is not, it's still wending its way through the TLS working group. Should we say something about that? Should we wait until, a future version? Those are some of the open issues we might want to discuss. And let's go into the next slide so we can just finish walking through our planning for the document. These are the discussions that we've just had amongst the co-authors. And obviously, if we adopt this in the working group, there would be lots of discussion. Another thing we might want to do is for greenfield protocols, say that you should only use 1.3 because why would you still use 1.2? There's some guidance that is in RFC 8740 on multiplex protocols, probably should reference that. There is some work on, I think one of the things that we have seen is that we're trying to move the world to forward secrecy, and TLS 1.3 obviously puts us square in that. There are some things that you can do or not do in TLS 1.2 in order to make sure that you do have forward secrecy, and so providing some guidance around that, specifically renegotiation and what you do with tickets and pre-shared keys and things like that, would probably be valuable to provide here for folks so that they, even if there's using TLS 1 to 2, they're kind of in the spirit of where things are moving. DTLS obviously was part of our recommendations as well in 7525, and I know that the DTLS 1.3 document is pretty close in the TLS working group, so we might want to reference that. Exactly when that's going to be approved, I don't know, or progress, but we'll need to have some text around DTLS versions as well as TLS versions. There are some things these days that are kind of mostly fixed with regard to compression and so on. So we might want to move some things to an appendix so that people are aware of those, or perhaps we just reference 7525 on some things and remove some things. There's a lot of background information in there that we would probably move around or put in an appendix as well. We were not planning to make changes to or update or replace 7457, which was the TLS attacks document. However, we would continue to reference that. So that's kind of the broad thinking that the co-authors have had, and we've been talking. Yaron submitted an initial version which has none of these changes. All it does is copies over 7525. So we haven't touched the document yet. We've just had some discussions among the co-authors, and ideally we feel it would be great for the working group, if it's going to be around long enough, to take this on so that we can have some open discussion and come to consensus about what we should do with regard to our TLS recommendations as we update them from 7525. And that's the thinking that we have had so far. Maybe the next slide that we talk about, what would come next in terms of our action items, and we would welcome discussion about how to proceed.
All right. So I'm going to turn it over to queue management now. Valerie, do we have anybody on the queue waiting to speak?
There's nobody asking for any questions.
All right. Well, I think, as with my chair hat on, I think it's safe to say that I don't think we would have any problems from our ADs if we wanted to adopt this. We sort of I don't necessarily think the ADs want us to turn into one of those eternal working groups that just never wants to die. But this clearly is in scope for the charter of the UTA working group. So I think if the working group wants to have this adopted, I don't think it's going to be a problem for us.
I agree.
And everyone who's typing into the chat in WebEx, like the WebEx is only for management. So if you do actually want to discuss something, instead of sort of announcing your intention to go to the mic, just go and type into Jabber, and I think I saw John adding himself to the queue. Yeah. So
John, please speak.
So I just looked through the document. I think some of the key lengths could be a bit stricter. Curves smaller than 192 bits should not be used. It's very loose. Could be tightened to 224 shall not be used or something. I didn't see that on the list.
This is Peter. John, that's a good point. We didn't have that on our list of proposed changes, and I think it should be there. Things have changed in the last 5 years for sure. That would be a good thing for us to discuss if we adopt the document.
All right. Anyone else? So I'll sort of speaking as an individual, I'll say that I believe we've had a few proposed errata over the years. It might probably is a good idea to look those over.
Noted.
See if right. Now I don't know how successful hums have been, and we certainly have to sort of confirm any decision on the mailing list. But if I could ask for a virtual hum on Jabber, or maybe combine Jabber and here people can say +1 or -1 to the following question. Should the working group seek to adopt, with the permission of the AD, of course, seek to adopt draft chapter UTA BCP 195 bis as a UTA working group document? Seeing a couple of people support adoption on on Jabber. Yeah, so this
Several people indicated in the Jabber that they support adoption. About 5 or 6.
So I think what we'll drop an email, a confirmation email to the list, but I think the author should expect to resubmit either this version or the next one as draft IETF UTA BCP 195 bis. All right. I think with that, we seem to be on track for time. I want to turn it over to Hannes, talking about ETLS profile for the IoT space.
I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, I think so. This document has been around for a little while. Next slide. As the title says, it specifically focuses on 103. So we also had, similar to what Peter mentioned, there was this prior development in this working group, which led to RFC 7925, the IoT TLS and DTLS profiles. And at that time, when we started this work, obviously IoT was still at an early stage, and there was either little or custom communication security in place. And luckily, I think it's fair to say that all the major IoT platform vendors slash operators use TLS and DTLS to protect their communication. And as we found out that many like CoAP and MQTT for that purpose. So those are the application protocols secured using TLS and DTLS. And also at the same time, like these protocols are then used for IoT device management. And we have co-chairing a group in the Open Mobile Alliance where the work on lightweight M2M has been done. We've had many test feds with more than 40 independent implementations that all used at least DTLS, and later we provided CoAP over TCP, and so there are also now TLS implementations for IoT that are used in those devices. So I would say that's pretty good. And in general, if you look around and we've done sort of investigations on what the different stacks provide, there are lots of high quality embedded implementations of TLS and DTLS 1.2 on the market. So that's all great. However, at that time when we worked on 7925, it was only focused on version 1.2, and there was obviously nothing in there for 1.3. Next slide. So this is what this document is about, the TLS 1.3 profile document, and there are a few things that it does. It's much shorter than the previously mentioned RFC, because TLS 1.3 and DTLS 1.3 fixed many problems and cleaned up lots of issues. So, which is a good thing. So a short document, but there's still a few things left that need to be done. The first point is that TLS 1.3 makes algorithm recommendations very much like what version 1.2 did. And those recommendations have been sort of tailored for the generic web usage in terms of algorithms, and that really worked well. But it turns out that IoT communities and vendors use different algorithms. So, and of course, the TLS 1.3 specification, like its earlier version, have foreseen that there are other deployment environments that may have different recommendations, and so that needs to be done. The next thing I think, and that's a little bit bigger, is that 1.3 added a zero round trip functionality, and it says application protocol must not use that mode without the profile defines its use. And of course, for HTTP, that this has been done. There's a separate RFC on that, 8470. But since we use, as mentioned on a previous slide, use other protocols, mostly in the IoT space, that are more optimized, if you will, for that use case, we added something on co-op, very much.
Can I just interrupt you? Although Stephen said at the end, you introduced the term, and Stephen, you can't come to the mic. I asked you to define what CTLS is.
You asked me what DTLS is?
CTLS. Oh,
CTLS. Compact TLS, but that's on the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, so to finish this one off, so we added this profile for the zero round trip in line with what the RFC 8470 did, but just for co-op. Co-op is conceptually very similar to HTTP in terms of its RESTful design, so that felt applicable. For MQTT, we still have to do more work. We're trying to catch up on like what the deployment situation is. There are different versions that are not backwards compatible, and so that's a slightly different story. Next slide. There are also some newer IoT developments, and which I think should be covered there as well as a kind of an update to the old RFC. One is the further developments around bandwidth reduction techniques, and there was a discussion on the list about the CWAR compressed certificates. John, who's also on the call, triggered that debate and made a contribution in form of an IETF draft. And there's also the whole work on certificate compression that's newer. And then on top of that, there are even alternative certificate formats like the use of CWT, which is yet another area. So there's more work or more extensions to make TLS sort of consume fewer bits on the wire. And then, as many of you know, there's also the compact DLS, a sort of a compressed version of DLS that may be useful to consider here as well. Also important and specifically designed for IoT deployments was the connection ID. and that's something that is being finalized in the TLS working group right now, or for a little while now. One part is in a separate extension to 1.2, and the other one is indeed sort of built in with more privacy mechanisms in 1.3 itself, DTLS 1.3. It's a DTLS feature. And then there have been also updates on the maximum fragment length extension, which became the record size limit extension, which is a mechanism to reduce the or indicate on how much RAM a beer has, which is of course also limiting resource on an IoT device. It doesn't have a huge amount of RAM. And so that's good to know for the other side. And so there was a new RFC published by the TLS working group there, which I think we should sort of discuss there, because the previous recommendation sort of, or the previous RFC recommended the use of the maximum fragment length extension for exactly that reason. And then there's this topic which it's a coincidence, I would say, has been discussed extensively on the TLS mailing list the last couple of days and weeks, is this the optimized retransmissions during the handshake, which are sort of just DTLS 1.3 makes a different approach to retransmission, specifically based on learnings that we made in mesh networks and some of the low power area networks where you have a lot of packet loss. Next slide. So and as you can imagine, the reason why I'm here in this group is because the previous work was done here, so it felt like kind of natural place to go to. It worked out pretty well last time, so we thought, why not this time as well? It's a smaller extension, as I said, just because of the way how the TLS 1.3 work was done. What I think we also have to do is, and Thomas, my co-author, and I have started doing that already, like looking at different embedded TLS stacks and see how they are doing with regards to the compliance of the previously published RFC, whether there's some fine-tuning needed or some additional wordings. And also, I've been reaching out to companies to see, specifically the cloud providers who use TLS, to see whether they have any and run into any issues that are worthwhile to mention on top of what we have already documented. And of course, ideally, something related to TLS 1.3, but who knows what they will come up. There are a few things that were mentioned to me already. For example, specifically on the use of it's sort of the certificates that are put into the devices during manufacturing, and then unfortunately with a lifetime that is too short, and so when they leave the department store, they actually you suddenly turn on the device and it has expired certificates. So that's an issue. There's some problems with SNI implementations embedded stacks, and some of it is related to the use of TLS on some of the non-IP based transports. So I will have to see whether that fits nicely in there, but we want to know more from other companies. And if someone of you has some insights there, we would be really interested to learn more about that.
So I can say Alexei is a virtual queue. So Alexei?
I'm supportive adopting this in UTA. I think it would be important just to sanity check that this document is aligned with previously presented document. I don't know how much alignment there is, but and the other is a question. If you want to include CTLS recommendations, I assume this will delay the document quite a bit, right?
Yeah, it's a good it's a good point on like how long we want to run this, whether this is supposed to be a shorter process or whether there's a longer effort. But I agree, if you it depends what we want to say. If we just want to say, oh, there's something there as well, it's work in progress, that may be fine. If it's more documenting sort of like best current practices in CTLS, then I agree with you. I think it's more in the line of, well, I was thinking more in the line of the former for that purpose. And the same, I think also what the work that John has been doing, and also I think also the certificate compression, that's newer stuff. So this would be more like if you have that problem, then here's something to consider type of indication, rather than everyone in the industry is doing it. You should do it too.
Yeah, I'm tempted to suggest that you do a quick revision for TLS 1.3 recommendation and DTLS, and then you do another revision for CTLS later on if you want to.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. Any other questions for Hannes? All right. I actually agree with what Alexei said. I think if we are publishing recommendations and profiles, they should be based on at least some body of experience. And if you sort of can't do that and also live on the bleeding edge of what the next thing is. But other than that, I think having multiple revisions is probably a better idea for other reasons as well.
Okay.
So, but again, this is all sort of part of the working group's discussion on the list eventually, right? So, I think if we can do the same kind of virtual hum plus one for adopting this. In that case, I think it would be draft IETF 7925 bis. As sort of in analogy with what we talked about for
yeah, unfortunately not on Jabber.
If you say in WebEx, I can count you.
Say that again.
Say your opinion in WebEx or WebEx chat. I'll count you.
Okay.
WebEx or Jabber or WebEx chat. Yes. Say what you believe. Support or disagree with adoption. And,
under name of WebOff group or something like that.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry, yeah, every time I log in, I show up as OWASP. It's kind of identity problem.
Yes. Okay.
yeah, we know it well.
And I want to add a small note that I agree with Alexei that CTLS is better to be handled separately, because from my understanding of the perspectives of CTLS, it will be a long story, and it will definitely delay the publication of the recommendation for TLS and DTLS 1.3.
Okay.
Tim Costello marked on I'm not sure if you wanted that for the mic, Tim, but that he would also be curious to see the experience and issues encountered by IT companies. All right. I haven't seen anyone disagree. We'll send out the usual confirmation email to the list, but it does sound like you should be prepared to resubmit as a working group document, Hannes, in a little bit. And with that, we are switching over to CBOR compression of RFC 2925 profile X509 certificates. That's a mouthful. So,
thank you. Yeah. So this is mainly about draft Matson TLS CBOR cert compress, which uses draft RASA COSI CBOR. And there's also a COSI draft. Current plan is to merge all of these and resubmit to COSI, but more of that later. So next slide. And this is quite related then to the last presentation, the TLS profile, because this CBOR compression is aiming for the TLS 1.2 TLS compression. So as stated in the TLS compression draft, not my draft, the working group adopted, X509 certificates take up a huge part of the total number of bytes. And this is especially true for CTLS when you even compress and re-encode the handshake messages. And the what this draft does, there was a question from Sean Turner, how this is, what this does, and I saw now that Hannes draft is asking how this is negotiated. So what this draft does, it registers a new compression algorithm for the TLS compression mechanism. So how this is from a TLS perspective, this is just a new compression algorithm, nothing more. And how you negotiate it is clear. This would then probably get number 4 or something, unless somebody else is registering a compression algorithm.
Okay.
Yeah. So this uses draft RASA to compress from their encoding to CBOR. The aim is to support all RFC 7925 profile certificate. And the reason why a new compression algorithm is necessary is that general purpose compression algorithms does not compress these highly profiled certificates much at all, if anything. And since I submitted this draft, the COSI working group has decided to take on this work. They are currently rechartering, and this is basically I think this is the only thing the working group will focus on, except standard registering new algorithms. So next slide. Here you can see example of so to the left you have a RFC 7925 profile certificate taking 314 bytes. Lib doesn't compress it well as much at all. In this example, 9%, and then that is actually one of the best results we had for lib. By changing some of the bytes in the strings in the examples that we get, lib often increase the size instead. By re-encoding everything to a CBOR, we can get over 50%, in this case 57%. Can take next slide. Here's just an example of how it looked like. To the left you have OpenSSL formatting of the X509 certificate, and to the right is the CBOR sequence encoding exactly the same information. So there's a one-to-one mapping between these. next slide, which is the main discussion. So the main thought is to do this now in the COSI working group and to register this compression algorithm for use in TLS from COSI. So is this interesting for TLS 103 CTLS? I would say yes, and so far seems to be interest. Is it okay to make such a TLS IANA registration from COSI? Formally, it's definitely okay, but of course, UTA or TLS should state that they want this. I don't think there's any meaning to have a separate draft in the TLS or UTA registering this in IANA. That's not very interesting. It's better to inform TLS UTA that this is happening and if they have any comments on the actual compression. Next question, I think, is already done. The new version of draft softening is using RFC 7925 design certificate profile. And the next things are things that we notice by trying to compress 7925. The first point is that the ASN1 scheme would be extremely beneficial. I think not only for this compression, but also for other trying to implement the profile. I think right now we have that in draft RASA. It would be more sense to actually have it in draft softening, updating 7925. And then there's the rest is more minor things that the encoding text string seems unspecified, is path length constraint mandatory to support, and it seems to be two different options to encode false for the criticality in extensions, which is of course following 5280. Yeah, I guess that's it. Questions, comments?
Hi, John. This is Hannes. Sounds cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see that being used. On one question, when you say ASM1 schema, what do you actually mean by that? Sort of more the attributes you have in a certificate that is a schema, or literally ASM1?
I guess literally ASM1.
I guess I need to think about that. What does that mean?
Similar to the, I guess I'm not an expert on ASM1 by any means, but I guess it's ASM1, yeah. Like the appendix in draft RASA right now.
I'll check it.
All right, so John, am I understanding you correctly that you are not proposing adoption of anything in UTA, but you are seeking, you want the UTA work in the UTA might overlap, might be effective with this work, is what you're saying essentially. Is that correct?
Yes, I think several of these points have already been addressed in the updated draft softening. It is now updating 7925, and it's mentioning some of these things for discussion.
Yeah, but you know, given what was just sort of, it was, I think, pointed out by several people that, you know, the working group is probably looking for a revision, a first revision, which doesn't include any references to the CTLS work, and only after that, you know, so you know, how much of what you're talking about now is only in CTLS space, and would that sort of, how would that affect your timeline?
I think nothing what we are doing is for only CTLS. But on the other hand, I think any recommendation in draft softening of using CBOR certificates might have to wait, because this will not be done shortly. Yeah. But I think having ASN 1 and having a certificate profile in the draft and making that very strict and concise would be very good, I think. So this is more input to the draft softening, and also information to the UTA working group that this is happening, likely to happen in the COSI working group. Should keep an eye open on that.
All right, it's good advice. Anyone else?
I can see a plus Q from Thomas, but in a +1 sign, so it's probably a bit late. But Thomas, you have something to say?
This was my +1 to the previous thing, adoption.
Okay. Are you going to present this work in TLS working group or not?
I have not asked for time for that.
Because formally it is some change to, well, not change to TLS protocol, but you need some new code point from TLS space, and probably it's interesting for TLS working group, especially if it is coupled somehow with CTLS work. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I have informed the TLS working group via mail. I might request some short time to present that when COSI has decided to do this. So the TLS, everybody in TLS working group is and knows that this is happening. Otherwise, TLS working group does not really need to do anything. The registration space in IANA is, I think, it can be done from COSI also, but and I don't think there is any meaning to have dragging that to TLS also, unless the TLS working group would like that. But I will check with the chairs if they want a short presentation of this at some later point.
Okay, thank you.
Mm. All right. Thank you, John. And that gets us to open mic time with 4 minutes to go in in our allotted time. So open mic. All right. I guess you can. Everybody can get 4 minutes. 4 minutes back then. Your chairs will send various confirmation emails to the list. Please review the new drafts as they appear, and let's keep working. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all.